Howdy, and welcome back to Fridays with Phil. This is Phil here with you again for another episode this week. And in this week's episode, I'm going to cover something that I feel is terribly important for you to understand. This week, we're talking about pain. There is an original blog post for this topic, and it's on the blog, and I'll put that in the description below for you guys so that you can see it and you can read it. It's rather short, so I felt that there was a need here to expand on what was in the original post because it was also kind of rather general and vague in its approach. And I wanted to take a slightly more in depth shot at it this time around and kind of really look at it. Um, yeah, strap yourself in tight, tie those laces, make sure we're good to go, and let's go ahead and get moving. Uh, I think we've all come to understand that there are times in our lives that pain enters in and makes itself felt to us. We all have days where everything just goes to hell all at once. Nothing seems to work right, and we hurt to a point that seems like the pain will win. That point where it feels like the pain will crush me because it's so overwhelming. What's to be done, right? I can run, find a way to escape the reality of that pain. Uh, I'll do anything to get away from it as long as I don't have to feel it or deal with it or talk about it, right? We don't want to talk about pain or deal with it because other people around us don't normally want to hear about someone else's pain because they're struggling to deal with their own pain at the same time. Or is it fear? Uh, for so long, I feared what would happen if I pushed through my pride and admitted that I was dealing with some form of pain, that I stayed stuck in the same habit cycles, and, you know, and then I didn't do anything about it. Um, I just continued to pretend that the issues would go away if I didn't pay any attention to them, that they would just disappear. I had reached a point in my life that I had fallen so far that I could barely see the surface anymore, and everyone around me had lost hope in my ability to rebound from that point because I had fallen so many times before and yet done nothing to change myself for the next time that I would get pushed because I would just fall again in the same way. So it was easier for them to say that I would fail because that's all they could see. It wasn't what they wanted to see, but it's what was on the outside, on the surface. Uh, so people told me that I didn't have it. The only way that it was going to end was that I was going to fail uh, to a point where someone else would decide that part of my journey was going to end, and they would decide that for me instead of me making that decision because I was just too weak to make that decision myself. And at that point, I was left with two choices. Either I do nothing and continue to fail, and then I go out as a coward with nothing to show for any of it except failure, or I could start fighting that fear and overcome the pain one small step at a time and begin to succeed for what I really wanted. To fight, I would have to find strength that was buried deeper within myself than I had ever, been to or tapped into before. Uh, I would have, I would have to have enough strength to make up for the fact that no one else could do the work for me to take those steps over and over and over again until I was done. I decided that to get started with this process, I would have to tune out people's negative concepts and comments. This was a journey that took place first and foremost internally, so no one on the outside would see quick results. There were still times where I stumbled and things that I failed at. The difference was I was no longer living in those failures. I found a way to pick up, move on, and take another step in the direction that I wanted to go, which was up the hill, always up. Recently, I reached the top of that hill and earned a college degree. I found a couple of more hills beyond that one, uh, and I'm at the bottom of those hills, uh, starting to move up one step at a time. One of those new hill, one of those new hills is to get healthier for myself. The key is I'm doing it for myself, not doing it for anybody else. I have to have the drive to make it happen, to take the small steps over and over and over again. It's difficult to do, and that's a given because it's something that's worth it, and everything that's worth it is a pain in the ass. In order for me to grow in the right ways, to get to the next part of this hill, I have to be willing to make the sacrifice of changing what I want and what I need. My needs have to be those things that are necessary for me to reach my goal. Instead, instead of the things that are easy or make me feel good, but those things also push me backwards instead of forwards. It's a fight every day, and, and it really is. So to help push through that fight, I picked up a couple of pieces of tech recently, just some technology to help me out, that would track my progress. But the tech doesn't do the work for me. I still have to push for it because I want it. Look, if you're not consistently pushing for it, then it won't happen. I don't care what we're talking about, whether we're talking about weight or school or work or relationships or any of that. It takes effort, and you've got to push through it every single day. I've got people that are coming to me now and saying, "Hey, like it looks like you're, at some level being successful with this, but I'm not seeing any results." Or I know someone else who's not seeing any results, and they say they want it, or the person asking me is saying that they want to change, that they want to make a difference. And the one thing I ask is, okay, how dedicated are you? How much effort are you really putting in? Because we can talk about this all day long, and you can say, yeah, Phil, no, I'm doing all my stuff. Um, I'm doing everything that I can. But only you know whether you're really doing everything you can, or whether you're 2%ing it, or whether you're cheating on it and yourself, especially with weight stuff. I'm telling you, if you cheat with that stuff, if you're like, I don't have to go work out, or whatever your setup is, whatever your game plan is, whatever works for you, whether it's eating differently or more exercise or more activity or a different kind of exercise or a different kind of activity, or just different choices when you eat. If you cheat on any of that, whatever your plan is, if you cheat on it, if you don't go 100% every day, and really try to push for that, you're not going to make it. You're not going to have it, and you're not going to do it. You're stuck in that fear cycle, and you're going to continue to fail, and you're going to continue to fall over and over again, and people are going to pass you up. That's just the way it is. If you really, really want to change, and you want to get these things, and you want to do it, because I have people that are just like, oh well, how do you do it? Like, I know it's harder for you. So how did you, manage to graduate? How did you get to that point? You got your degree now, but it was so difficult for you while you were going through it. Like, how did you push? Well, it really, honestly, it is all internal stuff. I stopped listening to everybody that thought they had their own ideas and their own ways of doing it, because I had already tried listening to those things, and none of that was working for me. None of that was making me successful. Uh, and so I said to myself, okay, why do I continue to do these things if they don't help? If it doesn't help, but it helps someone else, that doesn't help me, right? Okay, so because we're talking about personal growth here. I'm not saying, don't go out and help other people. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that sometimes you have to break it down to there are things that I need in my life, things that are better for me that I've got to do. And then you've got to go and do those things, whether other people necessarily agree with that or not. It is sometimes really irrelevant because if you know that it's truly good for you, and I'm not talking about the stuff that you're just like, oh, well, this is good for me just because I want it. Again, it's got to be that need. It has to make you better as a person and really improve your quality of life. If it's those things that you're looking for, and other people are just like, oh, well, what do you really need that for? Or they're saying that you know you don't really have to push for it, or they're trying to stop you from pushing for it or stop you from getting it. You have to push past those people and just say, no, I know that I need this, and so I'm going to go out and do it for me, because if I'm a better person, then I could help make other people better. Because you cannot, and hear me here, you cannot make other people's lives better if you yourself are not in a place to make yourself better. If you're not constantly improving yourself, then how on earth are you going to teach anyone else something that you have learned when you are not teaching yourself anything? When you are not improving yourself and continuing to build on yourself and grow and mold yourself into what you know you can be. If you are not doing that, then you cannot motivate anyone else. You cannot push anyone else, because then it's all just false. Otherwise, you have to do it first. So take that time to really push yourself to do those things that you're like, oh man, I know I should do this, but I don't really want to because I'd rather be lazy. I'd rather eat that bag of chips than go to the store, and buy better food for myself. It's so much easier to just pick up the phone and order a pizza because it's simpler, it's faster, they'll do it for me. It's food, I can eat it, I'll survive. Yeah, okay, you'll survive, but you won't be at that point that you want to be at. You'll never get there. It's not ever going to happen. If if you go to the gym and you work out and you do all this stuff, but then when you're not at the gym, you're drinking all the time, or you're doing drugs or something else, you're not ever going to make it, because you're basically trying to do something good, but then you're poisoning that good by ingesting all that other stuff that's so bad for you. And you're just going to retract, and you're going to take 3 steps backwards on the same day that you took 1 step forward. So then you're going to be negative, and you're going to be behind where you want to be, and it's not going to happen. And you know I know this is blunt and it's straightforward from me, but I don't know any other way to put it. There's not really another way to put it uh, to get the point across, for you to understand it. And I'm just certainly not going to just sugarcoat it for you to make it sound like you know it's all easy and it's simple and anybody can do it without trying. No, that's not. That's not what I'm saying, and that's just not the way it works. So look, if you understand nothing else from this, and you don't hear anything else that I've said from this episode, hear me now and understand this. When you encounter pain, don't dwell in it, fear it, or run from it. Acknowledge it and then find a way to push past it if you want to be successful. That's all I've got, folks. Next week, I've got another topic for you guys, and we'll get into that next week. But that's a whole week, so you've got a week now to start, pushing for those things that you really want, and making yourself better, and just going out there and doing it, or you'll be lazy and you'll give into that fear, and you won't do any of it, and that's really up to you. I you know I can sit here and say anything you really want me to say, but it doesn't make you do any of the stuff that you know you need to do. That's on you. So you've got to take the time to go out and find that, and then do it yourself, and really push for it. So I'm going to now give you the time to do that, and I'll see you guys next week.